Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to part 2 of our very festive food drive. We're so glad you're here. We're so happy to see your cheery faces and so grateful for the food donation you made in the lobby. If you were able to bring a can of food, we love it. And we're so excited now to share with you a very different sort of holiday fare. My name is Meredith Simpson, and for almost 3 years now, I've been hosting a community reading series called The Thirsty Word. It normally takes place over at the Fairfield Food Collective. Some of you may know it as the old Harper Brush Factory. And in the warm season, occasionally we're across the street at Petra Park. So every third Thursday of the month, a mix of 5 or 6 different writers from the region present their creative works for an audience, anyone who cares to show up. And the writing ranges from memoir to sci-fi to poetry, and occasionally we get a radio play or even a screenplay short. We're delighted tonight for the second year in a row to share with you an hour of original stories, plays, and poems on a seasonal or holiday theme. From children's bedtime stories to true wintertime tales to Christmas movie spin-offs, we hope that we warm your hearts this evening a little and give you something to smile about. Before we start, I just want to give a quick shout out. Many thanks to the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center for their support of this event again this year, to the staff and the tech team. Thank you to Neil Cunningham at Central Park Custom Furnishings for the use of his rehearsal space, very important. And many thanks to the Fairfield Public Library for supporting this series. And then many thanks to you for joining us here tonight. May your days be merry and bright. And, well, I think it's time to get on with the show. We're going to start tonight with an original children's story.
So I wrote a children's story called Mr. Mole Goes Christmas Shopping, and I had a special collaborator. My daughter Caroline did the illustrations. It was a cozy New England Christmas Eve inside the Mole family home. Mrs. Mole hung stockings by the fireplace. Mr. Mole sat at his armchair with a pipe and a good book. Their 2 children, Sally and Benjamin, played happily. Outside their hole, a blizzard was blanketing the frozen earth. It was not the sort of evening anyone would want to be out in, especially a homebody like Mr. Mole. He was a procrastinator, however, and had left his Christmas shopping to the very last minute. So he reluctantly retired his pipe and stood up, put on his overcoat, hat, and scarf. Mrs. Mole looked at him strangely. "I have a few errands to run," Mr. Mole said matter-of-factly. "Won't be long." "In this weather?" Mrs. Mole asked. "It's not so bad," he replied. "Just a quick trip to town." The path to Gloucester, the closest village, was completely covered in thick, wet snow. Visibility was quickly turning from dreadful to non-existent as Mr. Mole trudged toward the lights in the distance. His boots were soaked, his hat froze to his head, and his hands were numb inside his wool mittens. He tried to think of something cheerful to keep his spirits up, something other than catching hypothermia and not having any Christmas presents for his family. He thought of his friend Stanley Squirrel. Stanley was an aviation enthusiast. He claimed to be the descendant of flying squirrels, and he was always building odd contraptions designed with the intention of getting airborne that never quite worked. Stanley had broken several bones and was always in and out of Dr. Dockson's office. It was a wonder he was still alive. Even Stanley isn't crazy enough to be out on a night like this, Mr. Mole said to himself. But there he was, being blown side to side in the storm like one of those sword-fishing boats on the raging sea, snowflakes stinging his face. After some time, Mr. Mole began to hear those ocean waves crashing in the harbor, and he knew he was almost there. Soon he reached Peter Packrat's shop at the edge of town. "My heavens!" Peter Packrat exclaimed when Mr. Mole entered the store, struggling to pull the door open against the snowdrift outside. "I was just getting ready to close." The shelves and tables in Peter Packrat's store were filled from top to bottom with an odd assortment of toys, books, collectibles, tchotchkes, and knickknacks. Everything was at least slightly used or in various stages of disrepair. The shop was dusty, musty, but most importantly, it was warm. "I just need a few things to round up my Christmas shopping," Mr. Mole said. He stumbled around the shop, clumsily poking through piles of junk. He was trying not to panic when Peter Packrat approached him. "How about this piece of fine jewelry for the missus?" he proposed, dangling a garish ruby-colored necklace in front of him, which was missing several pieces and probably made of plastic. "What about this?" Mr. Mole said, pointing to a bottle of lavender perfume behind the counter. "Oh, that, well," Peter Packrat pondered, pulling on his scraggly beard and straightening his weathered ball cap. "I got that from a friend in Boston. I couldn't accept less than 20. Mr. Mole fished around in his pocket for his wallet. "All I have is 20, he said, "and I need something for the kids as well." Peter Packrat eyed him carefully. "Well, it is Christmas," he said finally. "I'll take 20, and I'll throw in a sled for Ben and a doll for Sally." "Bless your heart," Mr. Mole exclaimed gratefully. He ignored the doll that Peter Packrat was holding in his hand, which looked like it had been used as a dog toy and was missing both eyes and an ear. He picked a nearly new doll off the shelf and a wooden toboggan with some rust he was sure he could scrub off. He emptied the contents of his wallet on the counter. Peter Packrat looked at him with a mix of scorn and pity, but in the end relented. After all, it was Christmas. Mr. Mole emerged from the shop proudly, only to find that the blizzard had dropped another foot of snow on the ground. He decided his best strategy for getting back home was to put the bag, which contained the doll and the perfume, in the sled and pull it through the snow. This proved to be more difficult than he thought. He'd barely made it out of town when he came upon Felix, Mr. McAllister's tabby cat. Felix had a blue collar with a bell, but the howling winds must have drowned out the sound of it. His yellow eyes gleamed in the darkness. "Hello," he said menacingly. Hello, Mr. Mole stammered. "What are you doing out on a night like this?" "I might ask you the same question," Felix said. "I guess we both have restless souls." "I'm doing some last-minute shopping," Mr. Mole explained. "It's Christmas." "Yes, Merry Christmas," Felix said without an ounce of feeling. "I believe it will be your last." And with that, Felix pounced on Mr. Mole and narrowly missed, as the poor creature dodged and dived through a crack in the stone fence in Mr. McAllister's leaf pile. Mr. McAllister had several large maples in his yard, which dumped an enormous amount of leaves every autumn. Each year he would rake the leaves into piles and pull them to the backyard and deposit them at the end of the stone fence that separated his house from the country road. He told himself that he would burn them in the spring, but he never got around to obtaining a barrel, and the leaves piled up, creating a very good hiding place for Mr. Mole. Felix pawed into the leaves this way and that, but to no avail. Mr. Mole was too deep inside to reach him. After thrashing about for a few minutes, the cat gave up and moved on. The leaf pile may have been a safe place for Mr. Mole to hide, but it lacked the necessary insulation for him to comfortably stay the night, and Mrs. Mole was probably getting worried about him by now. "So cold," he said to himself. "I must get home." Slowly, cautiously, he poked his head out of the leaf pile. There was no sign of Felix, but he could come back at any moment. Mr. Mole would have to take that chance, or risk freezing to death. Unfortunately, in his rush to escape the cat, Mr. Mole had dropped the sled and the shopping bag. So much snow had fallen in the meantime, there was little chance of finding them now. "Oh, dear," said Mr. Mole. He headed home empty-handed. With each step, he sank further into the snow. It was so dark, he couldn't tell where he was going. "I'm so tired," he said to himself. "I could just lie down for a minute." Just then he heard a noise overhead. He looked up, expecting perhaps to see a hawk bearing down on him. But instead, a large red wooden sleigh came to a crash landing just a few yards away. Mr. Mole got up from his crouch and brushed the snow out of his eyes. "Stanley!" he exclaimed. "You've come to rescue me!" "Ho, ho, ho!" cried the white-bearded man who was piloting the strange aircraft. "They usually call me Santa Claus, or sometimes St. Nicholas, but never Stanley." The man was wearing a red suit and a pointy hat to match, with a white pom-pom on the end. He was basically what Mr. Mole expected Santa to look like, except he was much smaller. He was only a little bigger than Mr. Mole, and instead of being pulled by reindeer, his sleigh was hitched to 8 miniature white rabbits. Mr. Mole just stared. "I thought you were human size," he said finally. "Ho, ho, ho! Human size?" Santa seemed offended by the remark. "No, King of the Elves am I. Besides, how do you think I get down all those chimneys?" "And the rabbits?" "They're extremely fast, and they camouflage in the snow to help avoid predators." "Well, I sure am glad to see you," said Mr. Mole. Can you get me home?" "Ho, ho, ho! Hop in," Santa replied. "You're my next stop. But you're a little turned around, and we're getting pretty lost out here." Finally, they arrived at Mr. Mole's home. Santa handed him several packages and a bag of goodies. "I'll let you deliver these for me," he said with a wink. "I've got to make up for some lost time." "Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!" And with that, he shook the reins, and the sleigh sped off into the snowy night. The next morning, Mr. Mole arose to find Sally playing with a new doll, and Ben urging her to go sledding with him with his Christmas toboggan. Mrs. Mole was wearing a sparkling ruby necklace. "We thought we lost you in the storm," she said. "Did you get what you needed?" I think so, yes," Mr. Mole said. "But maybe next year I'll try mail order." And with that, he made some tea and a pipe and sat by the fire and thought about how wonderful his cozy little hole in the ground was, and how he probably wouldn't leave it again until next spring.
The first mistake was to leave Fargo with the broken heater. The car dealer couldn't get the part until after Christmas, and that would be too late. Ivana and I left early the next morning wearing parkas and a blanket covering our legs. There was enough heat to keep the bottom of the windshield clear if I scraped it from time to time. And if we timed it right, we would arrive for Christmas Eve dinner with our 2 pies. Things were going well until we reached northern Iowa. Then the wind picked up. The shortcut was a 2-lane blacktop that should have cut an extra hour off the trip, but it had snowed lightly the day before, and the snow was as light as dust. It started blowing around, and soon I came upon a long line of cars and semis stopped dead. The snow had drifted across the road so that nothing could get through. It was a classic Midwest ground blizzard, such that I was familiar with in North Dakota. A haze of white surrounded us, with blue sky above. I turned the car around and drove back to the previous town to find an alternative route to the interstate. It only took a couple of miles to find the road had drifted impassably there as well. We were trapped. I drove to a house, but no one was home. It dawned on me that without heat and with the sun going down, the car would be a death trap. I drove back and found a house with cars next to it. Although the house was owned by a retired couple, a dozen or so people were crammed into the living room. All had been driving somewhere for Christmas Eve. All were trapped like us, and all had been transporting food. With the help of the couple, we put together an impromptu dinner, and it was wonderful. The retired couple had a turkey, others had mashed potatoes and gravy, someone else had a casserole. We donated 2 pies. The imposed-upon couple were gracious hosts, but they just didn't have enough room for everyone to comfortably sleep, so they called the neighbors, and we volunteered to sleep there. The neighbor's house was nearby, but hidden by trees. I felt a bit guilty, as they had this lovely guest room, while the people in the other house were sleeping on the floor. They were an older couple, Turby and Harlan. He was a local businessman while she took care of the house and collected antiques. We sat up chatting for the rest of the evening, having pleasant conversation and hot cocoa and listening to Christmas music. My thoughts went to what would likely have been a tense and awkward Christmas Eve with my own dysfunctional family. Christmas morning, Turby made us German pancakes for a leisurely breakfast while we waited for the snowplows to clear the highway. Before we left, they gave us a small gift, which was an ornament from their tree, a red wooden car, resembling our own red car. While Harlan cleared the driveway with his tractor, we chatted to Turby over tea and Christmas cookies. Late morning, we saw the snowplows roaring down the road, and we knew it was time for us to leave. After hugs and Christmas wishes, we drove off for an uneventful trip. That was over 30 years ago. We never saw Harlan or Turby again and have long since moved back to Iowa, but we still exchange Christmas cards. And every year, we hang the red car ornament on our tree and recall the lovely Christmas Eve we spent with strangers.
Well, if I do, will you go to sleep? That's my job, you know, to put you to bed. And we wouldn't want to disappoint your mother.
Yeah, I promise. Really, I do.
Okay. It happened that in the deep south of a faraway land, there grew a flower. It was the most strange flower, different from all the rest. It grew to be 12 feet tall, but was drawn out and stringy, a most gaunt thing. Its name was poinsettia. Poinsettia had a tiny little blossom hidden by special off-white color leaves. It wasn't a very pretty flower to look at. Do you want me to keep going, or is this boring?
It's a little boring. Does it get better? I want it to get better.
Well, you have to listen to find out. I think it gets better. Shall I continue?
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
Where were we? Oh, yes. Now, it also happened that because of this plant's strange looks, it became very, very timid. If a human looked at it, it would shake and tremble. And if it was spoken to, the poor thing would practically lose all its leaves. So, as a protective measure, the poinsettias moved away to the sunny slopes and hills of the mountains. Alone there, nothing would bother them. Kind of like you when you play by yourself in the playground.
Yeah, I don't really like it though, but it's okay.
I know what you mean, kid. Maybe it gets better.
I want it to.
Me too. Okay. There came a day when the king of that country summoned his court to hold a meeting. His courtiers gathered.
I have decided this winter has been so cold and bleak that I have decided we need a bit of spring in our palace. You must notify all the worthy people in my kingdom to search the countryside for a flowering plant that I may have within my palace. It must not just be any flower, but an unusual and very beautiful flower, a Christmas flower. Tell them that a boon will be given, and that, well, that shall be a quarter of the land in my kingdom.
Wait, what? That's a lot. 1/4 of the land? Wait, can we go find a flower? I know where there are some. Can we please?
Well, right now it is bedtime. Maybe tomorrow, okay? Shall we continue?
Oh, okay.
The session with the king ended. The courtiers dispersed to bring the news to all in the kingdom. In no time, the country was covered with peasants seeking a special flower for the king. They searched and gathered and searched, more specimens than one could count. When the Christmas season neared, the people of the kingdom began to appear at the palace with their specimens for the king to judge. By Christmas Day, indeed, all of the people of the kingdom were at the palace with their flowers.
Well, did they find it, the special one? Oh, I wonder if it has superpowers. That would be so cool.
Slow down, hotshot. You're getting ahead of the story. If you want to find out what happens, you got to settle in and listen to the story, see? That's how stories work.
Yeah, I know. Okay, let's go.
All right. Where were we?
All the people were at the palace to show their stuff to the king.
Yeah, okay. Now, not one of the flowers would pass the king's test. It wasn't that the king was too extravagant in his taste. In fact, the king had very simple tastes. It was just that either the plants were just too plain or too fancy. Some had even shriveled under the harsh weather conditions on the trip. After the king had refused all he was brought, he announced to his subjects,
Alas, I am sad. But I shall not be defeated. My offer is still valid for next year.
Well, did they find it? I really want the king to be happy.
Well, you gotta listen to find out. Let's see. Again, all of the people in the kingdom searched for plants that might please the king. One day, a young girl walked onto a hillside where poinsettias were growing. She was looking for a plant for the king, so when she saw the poinsettia, she noted how strange they seemed. As she looked at the plants, they began to shake and quiver. Compassionately, she talked to the plants. The poor plants were so very frightened, they felt like wilting.
What strange little plants you are. So very tall, and yet you shake as I talk. What a queer-looking flower, too. Well, I suppose you have just as good a chance as any other. After all, we've tried almost every plant and not one has sufficed.
Oh, I think I like her.
So the girl brought a cart that could handle the 12-foot plants to the place, loaded it with poinsettias. Looking at them again, she said,
Why, oh dear, you're almost, well, ugly.
Oh, this made Poinsettia so sad. But it was on its way to the king's palace. The poor plants knew it too. They were so nervous they felt like shriveling up and dying. In fact, they did shrink. By the time they arrived at the palace, they were no more than 18 inches tall. The girl was astonished when she opened the doors to the cart to find that her load of 12-foot trees was reduced to 18-inch cottage plants.
My, what has happened? You were 12 feet tall, and now you're just little cottage plants. Oh, the king will be so disappointed with me.
Well, the girl brought her plants to the king to see if her poinsettias would please him. The king looked at the strange plants, and after studying them for a while, he said,
Oh, no! What are these? You there, girl. You brought me cottage plants. Oh, I saw that great 12-foot tall cart, and I thought, well, there is something. Ah! Look at me when I tell you this. Off with your head.
What? No!
Hang on, don't interrupt, pay attention.
Just kidding. I always wanted to say that. Come here, girl. You know, they are beautiful in their own way.
Upon hearing this, the poinsettias were just overcome and blushed just brilliantly. Their strange blossom guard leaves turned a crimson royal red. At this, the king exclaimed,
Why, yes, look at these. This is the plant we've been searching for 2 years. Not one flower or plant exceeds the beauty of this.
Hearing this, the plants blushed so hard they never again turned back to their original color.
I hereby decree that this is our palace flower, our Christmas flower. And you there, girl, you have earned the boon I promised. Courtiers, see here. This girl now owns a quarter of the land in my kingdom. Respect her and her family accordingly. What?
Everyone.
Oh, what? What are you doing in my head?
Everyone.
Oh, yes, of course, everyone. Treat everyone with kindness and respect.
Thank you, yes, thank you, my king.
Oh, and it is I that must thank you. If you ever need anything, you just let me know. You shall always have my gratitude.
Well, there was that prince I saw over there as I came in. He's rather cute.
Oh, does she get him, the prince? Is he handsome? Oh, I want him to be handsome. Do they get married and live happily ever after? Oh, I want that for her.
I think that probably all happens, but you know, that is another story.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. And poinsettia?
Well, to this day, poinsettia remains a celebrated bright red Christmas flower.
Whoa. Grandpa, I just got it. Its superpower was turning red at the right time.
Yeah, and in a way, it was its shyness too. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, I get it. Oh, that's so cool. I want to be like that when I grow up.
I think you will be. Well, remember our deal?
Yeah, I remember. Good night, Grandpa. I love you.
Good night, little one. I love you too.
Winter Cardinal. Under the stiff green hedge, flags of scarlet feathers urge me out of my snowy sleep. I step into the crystal landscape, and icy breath stabs my face. How many hidden rubies before this world quits shivering inside the dark heart. Another Christmas story. They gather in the barn, stomping their feet to shake off the cold. A husband, a wife, a cow bellowing out to her baby caught in the canal. The rest of the family sits at the table, fumbles with the flatware, gets up, looks out the window. They breathe in the aroma of pine. Watch the silver strings of icicles shimmer against the crimson, yellow, and green globes that dangle from spindly branches. Everyone prays for it to happen, for it to be over, so they can sit at the table together, a family Christmas. A door slams, but only the husband returns. Disappointment slides down to the toes of the young boy. Unspoken grief freezes his Nebraska demeanor. It's done. Couldn't save the calf. Let's eat. Where's Mom? I don't know. Maybe washing up? Oh, yes, she was washing up the remnants of hope, reshaping lost energy into determination. She doesn't give up. She keeps pushing. She has no choice. It's buried in her genetic spiral. The husband thought the calf was dead. But what is life, death? It's all the same. A stronger tug on the leg, the cleansing of the throat, a blessing, a belief, a considered bounty. It's the heart that starts us living, beating magnificently because she stayed. Suddenly a bird. Suddenly a bird sings in the plain morning of winter, a tone so pure my light shivers. I must learn the secrets of winter, bend close to the breathing. When cold numbs my silver bones, salvation may come in the tiny fluttering of wings.
Clarence Oddbody, Angels Second Class, reporting for duty, sir.
Clarence, a woman down on Earth needs our help.
Splendid. Is she sick?
No, worse. She's falling for the wrong man. It's Mary Hatch. She's destined for a kind man, a loyal man, a family man.
George Bailey, sir?
That's right, Clarence. You've been paying attention. Trouble is, George Bailey got stuck at the old building and loan office again tonight and didn't go to the high school graduation dance where he and Mary were meant to fall into the swimming pool and fall in love.
Oh, dear. I see.
Even worse, George is about to be replaced by an imposter, a gun-toting horseman passing through town, known by some as the Duke.
Oh, just like you see in the movies, sir.
Just like you see in the movies, Clarence. Mary's about to make an error in judgment that will cost her everything. And the wonderful life she's meant to have with George Bailey, it's swimming down the river right past... Clarence, you have to stop it.
But how, sir?
We trust you'll find a way.
Will I earn my wings, sir?
Well, maybe one of them.
I suppose it's a start, sir.
A good solid start, Clarence. Oh, here they come now, Clarence, right past the old Granville house at 320 Sycamore. You know the one.
I can't see a thing, sir. It's a little fuzzy from here.
Let's see if we can sharpen that up a bit. There, that's better. See her in the bathrobe and him on the horse?
Oh, I can tell he's going to be one tough customer, sir.
The toughest there ever was, Clarence. Good luck.
Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight? Come out tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon? You've got a pretty mean whistle there, Mr. John Wayne.
Oh, nothing to write home about, little missy.
Let's meander down the lane a little, why don't we?
Fine, but I'm gonna need some dry britches pretty quick. I'm sticking to my saddle.
Well, and whose fault is that?
Listen here, sister. You made me enter that Charleston contest and then pulled me into the pool.
You can put up a fight, John, but you're a wonderful dancer. And an even better swimmer.
Oh, a man ain't nothing without survival skills. And this horse and I been across some pretty mean rapids, haven't we, Dollar?
Whee!
Climb down off of that steed, John. There's something I've been wanting to say to you.
Whee!
Now, I know you say you're just passing through, John, but you did happen to stop in Bedford Falls. Again. And I just wondered why.
Well, can a fella fill his canteen once in a while?
Is that all I am to you? Water in a canteen?
Oh, quiet, you mangy cur. Just look at this dusty nothing town. Run-down Victorian houses. Look, you're pretty enough, dame. Maybe I ought to take you with me, but this ain't living. Watch this, Mary. I'm going to put a bullet through that there window with my 82 Winchester.
Oh, no, John, don't. I don't want any trouble.
Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. I'm going to make a wish, see? And if I can break the glass...
Oh, no, John, don't. It's full of romance, that old place. I'd like to live in it.
In that old dump? Not me, sister. Mary, when I'm done shaking off the dust of this crusty nothing town, I know what I'm going to do the rest of my days.
Yes, John?
I'm going to be the biggest, toughest movie star America has ever known. My westerns and war movies will live forever. I'll be the poster man for toxic masculinity.
Well, masculinity sounds fine, John, but toxic? I'm not sure I like the sound of that.
Grown men will salute me, doggone it, and women will shiver inside their girdles.
Well, how many women are we talking about? Wouldn't you settle for just one, shivering inside the cotton robe she just stole from the high school locker room?
Well, you sure ask a lot of a man. What, you gonna throw a rock? Not bad. For a girl. Hey, what'd you wish for?
Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight? Come out tonight.
Come out tonight. Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight? And dance by the light of the moon. What'd you wish for when you threw that there rock?
No.
Oh, spill it, Missy.
I told you it might not come true. Oh, fine. I want you to lasso me the moon, John Wayne.
Well, I got a lasso, little lady, but I don't know if I can get it to the moon.
Why don't you kiss her instead of talking her to death?
Huh?
Why don't you kiss her instead of talking her to death?
Want me to kiss her, huh?
Youth is wasted on the wrong people.
Well, A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Hey, you got a problem, officer?
I got a problem. Report of a gunshot and broken glass on private property.
I never apologize, mister. It's a sign of weakness.
You got a license for that thing?
Oh, Bird, it's my fault. I was throwing caution to the wind.
And rocks through the window? I think this troublemaker's putting ideas in your head.
Listen here, Pilgrim. I'm pretty sure our only crime was adding to the ambiance. Hey, who ratted us out anyway? I'll sock him one.
Odd little fella put a call into the station. I think he called himself Clarence. That's neither here nor there.
Sounds like a wet blanket.
Say, you're not from around here, are you?
It depends.
He hails from Winterset, Iowa, officer.
That your horse?
Depends.
Now look here, I've had enough of your lip. And
Go
if I don't...
easy on him, Bird. He hit his head falling into the high school pool.
Well, that explains the wet chaps. And you, Mary Hatch, wearing nothing but a damp robe in public?
Mary, come quick! Your mother's had an accident. She was eavesdropping on a conversation between your father and some kook who showed up in a ruffly nightshirt. Says he's an angel.
An angel?
Your mother fainted dead away and fell right down the stairs.
Oh, poor mother. Oh, John, I'm so sorry. I've just got to go. Ride me home on your handlebars, young man.
Yes, miss. I'll take you home right away, miss.
Oh, but watch out for the cord of my... Oh! Stop! The bike. Avert your eyes, gentlemen.
Your robe, Miss Hatch.
Thank you, officer.
Huh. Looked better the other way, don't you think?
Mr. Wayne.
That's my name.
I think I mistook you for someone else.
Who?
A hero. Take me home, young man.
Yes, miss.
Huh. You know what I heard?
What?
Every time a bell rings, an angel falls out of his saddle.
That's it, Buster. You're coming with me until you're right in the head.
Far as I know, you can't arrest a fella for a little extra swagger.
Oh, it's going to be like that, is it?
Put up your dukes, copper.
Oh, gladly.
Oh. Almost got me. Try again.
Mary Hatch deserves better than the likes of you.
There ain't nobody better than me. Not anywhere.
Yeah? Well, George Bailey hasn't left for college yet, so we'll just see about that.
George Bailey? Sounds like a drunk Irishman. Oh, my.
Cat got your tongue?
My mouth's bleeding. Bert, my mouth's bleeding.
That's for George Bailey, mister. Merry Christmas.
How'd I do, Joseph?
You made the big man proud there, Pilgrim.
Oh, thank you, sir. Do I get my wing now? Which one do I get? My left wing or my right wing?
Let's not talk about politics, Clarence. It's Christmas.
I was officially divorced in September of 2014. My life became a thick gray cloud, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, I slid into a low-grade depression. I was also between jobs, and I couldn't seem to summon up the energy that I needed to face life. I became a recluse, and money was tight. It was the first and only time in my life where I was living off of a credit card. By the time December rolled around, I felt like a doomed soul walking the earth, dragging a heavy chain. It was a gray, wet day. There was no snow, only wet leaves and mud. I was looking at the sad, bent, fake Christmas tree in the corner of the room, one of the few things I had kept from the breakup. There were only a few Christmas decorations, a few odd things that I had picked up at Goodwill. I was thinking about the approaching holiday, and I was really wishing that I could just skip it entirely. My heart was not in it that year. And I thought about the kids, their first Christmas with their parents apart, and it sickened me. They didn't deserve it, and neither did I. I just wanted the new year to arrive with the hopes of finding my footing again and starting anew. Basically, I was exhausted, emotionally and spiritually. I sat down on my favorite chair and I laid my head back and closed my eyes. I felt a deep longing, an ache that was so profound that I felt my only way out was to surrender to it entirely. When suddenly I fell deep within myself, dropping down into what seemed like a dream state, and yet I was fully aware of what was happening. It was thrilling, and yet it was tinged with fear. I was standing in snow, and although I couldn't see anything particular, I had the sense that I was in an old European village. Standing a few yards away was a man dressed entirely in red. He was trim and dignified, a sophisticated gentleman from another era. His red suit was tailored fit, and although I could not see them, I felt as if he were wearing cufflinks. On his head was a fur-lined German hat, which I recently discovered is called a Bavarian. It too was red. And he had a beard, but not a long flowing white one. It was neatly trimmed and gray. I realized that this was St. Nicholas, or at least a Christmas spirit. He was staring at me, and I met his gaze, hoping to hear what he wanted to say to me. But what I saw was a smirk, a mischievous, twisted smirk, and his eyes were sparkling like a child's. I then saw that in his right arm was raised above his head, he was holding a snowball. But the snowball was not white, it was golden, and it shone, and golden rays shot out of it as if it were the sun itself. I realize now what he was about to do, but before I could protest, he threw the snowball directly at me. I was shocked. How dare he? But before I could shield myself, the snowball exploded on my chest. But instead of pain and the feeling of cold snow, I felt an overwhelming warmth. It entered me, and the warmth filled my heart and then spread throughout my entire being. I came out of this as if gasping for air. I sat there in the chair with my eyes wide open, still feeling the warmth in my chest and my body, and I realized what had just transpired. This spirit, this man in red, had just put the Christmas spirit into me with his golden snowball. I smiled, and chills ran up my arms and up my back, and in a childlike voice, I said aloud, "I love you, Santa." I had an epiphany sitting in that chair. Christmas was not about me. It was about the kids. Within days, a brand new white Christmas tree was put in the corner with dark blue lights. I bought some new decorations, making the apartment feel warm and magical. And I made sure there were presents to put under the tree for my beautiful boys to open on Christmas morning. They would feel the love. They would feel the spirit. To this day, I can truthfully say, I believe in Santa Claus.